someone had asked, hey, look, if I wanted to just trade, say, 3 signals a day, how would I do that? And so this morning, just before the webinar, I sort of finally pieced it together. When now I've actually put it together, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to go through this one in depth, as much depth as I can, because there are a lot of like different concepts that kind of come together to get this one get this one done. So a couple things that you'll notice, like I've got on my screen, if you can see it. Okay, I've got basically the finished system here, and I'll just scroll back and I'll show you what it looks like. But basically, this is the CL, and it opens at 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, and I've basically told it to just do three trades a day, using just whatever, I'm using a crossover, a 2-tangle crossover, which is just something to generate some signals. Obviously, yeah, Bill, I just got started. I'm just sort of diving right into it. And the idea is I just got some sort of signal generator here, and the concepts that we're going to cover today, I'm going to actually go through, as you can see, a signal blocker, which is actually what Zach wants to cover as well today. The long and short modifier node, the signal counter node, the inverter node, and these are all function nodes that you can see under the BloodHound interface under the function nodes. These are ultimate features. And as you can see the results here, it's taken 3 trades. So I'm just going to plug in this is, by the way, this is my signal. Okay, it's the crossover. Like I said, it can be literally anything, whatever you want to use. I'm just using crossover because it's easy. And I'm going to plug that into the result node. But you can see, had I sort of let this crossover run wild, this is kind of what you would have gotten. You would have gotten a long here, a short here, a long here, and just after 7:03, you would have got a short and a long. But you can see it basically cut itself off after 7 o'clock, after these 3. And you can see there's also trades that did occur in the early hours of the morning there when the markets were in extended trading hours. Okay, so let's build this piece by piece. Okay, just little tiny pieces by pieces. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of leave the final one up here. Okay, and well, not up here, but I'm just going to leave it kind of off to the side, both as a reference point so we can see where we're going, and you can see the final picture of it. But also for me, it just makes it a little easier for me to just use it as a reference point when I'm working with you guys. So I'm going to hide this node for now, just to give us a little more screen real estate. I'll tuck that in, zoom out just a little bit there. Okay, open up a new chart, and we'll start this over again. Okay, so again, what we're trying to do here is trying to construct a system that is going to basically restrict us to only trade X number of signals a day. Okay, so I've set it to 3 signals a day. I'll show you how easy it is. Once you've got 3 signals, you can just change the number, and you can adapt it to 4 signals, 5 signals, etc., etc. Okay, some of you probably have asked in the past, and I get this in webinars. Hey, I don't want to just trade signals. I want to go and do something like, well, after making $500 of profit, cut me off, I'm done for the day. Or 3 losses in a row, or 5 wins in a row. Now that's considered, like, if you're familiar enough with NinjaTrader, there's basically 2 types of components you're dealing with. You have indicators and you have strategies. Okay, so indicators basically don't have, like, what they can do is they can look at chart data. But they can't, they're not privy to information like your trade data, like things like, what's your count at, how many wins and losses did you have, since you opened your session. That's what in NinjaTrader, that's considered what they call strategy. And so our strategy component is called Raven. So knowing that this is sort of a feature that people want, I'll just sort of leave it here as we are looking to address something like that as a potential feature going forward. So anyway, if you, however, you want to bake in, something like this where you want to count how many signals and just take the first 3 signals. The gentleman, I think back in June asked, how do I do it so I take the second signal of the day, not the first one, just the second one of the day, and I demonstrated how to do that in a June webinar. And this is kind of a very similar, but slightly different flavor to that whole thing. Okay, so let's start with this. Okay, I've got a tick chart here, lots of bars, and you notice I actually, if you were sharp enough to catch it while I was setting it up, I actually put it on default 24/7, and that will basically give me the entire chart length. Okay, sorry, that'll give me all the chart data regardless of what time frame we're in, and that can be usually quite ideal. Like, so, I mean, you could say you only intend to trade the real-time hours, or sorry, regular trading hours. You could, in theory, just do this, right? But let me demonstrate why that may be less than ideal. Okay, so let me see if I got a session boundary painted. So there we go. So you see this huge gap here? All right, that is when the market had closed at your real time, the regular trading hours had finished the day before in my case on Mountain Standard Time, so at 12:30. Okay, and then it picks up again the next morning at 7 o'clock in the morning the next day. And of course, there's a lot of action that happened in between there, but we're missing that data. And consequently, when you put up an indicator, so let's do an SMA. I might as well do the 210 because that's kind of what, actually, I have a template for it back, so I'm going to load that guy up, the 210. Okay. That looks rather hideous. Let's shrink that up a bit. All right, so actually, guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to use something that doesn't look quite as cluttered. Let's just change these moving averages a little bit. Make it like a 1030, just because that looks a little messy and makes it a little harder for us to figure out what's going on. Okay, so and I think actually let me just double check, but I'm going to go back to my energy regular trading hours, and I think I might actually be probably been using the wrong session, but nonetheless, I just wanted to illustrate this point here. So, okay, Julie's just asking, so the signal counter can count 2 higher highs and then enter to go long. Yeah, that's another, I guess, another problem to tackle. I'll have to think that one through. And because basically the signal counter can count what they call signals. So if you can mark off each higher high as a signal, then absolutely can do that. And the same kind of techniques will apply. Actually, what I'm going to show here will generally apply to what you're trying to do, Julie. Okay, so let's go ahead, because the thing about the signal counter, okay, it just counts signals. All right, the way it's designed is it basically goes back and counts how many signals occurred in the past according to some look back value. Okay, so you can sort of imagine it's trotting along, right? And you're the signal counter, and your job is just to look back how many times how many bars that you've told it to look back, and see if there was if it's accumulated enough signals to match your count. Okay, so if you set your signal counter to say 3, all right, and so for example here, okay, so for example, you got a crossover here, you got a crossover here, crossover here. Okay, so there's basically 3, kind of 3 little crossovers here. 1, 2, 3. So essentially, what will happen is signal counter, if you told it to basically count 3 and told it to look back, enough bars, it will say that within, if it's say this bar right here, so you're here and this is the edge of the market, right about there. Okay, it'll say something like, well, okay, yeah, after this third one, here, say right after this one, it'll say, yeah, the third bar has been counted, and then it itself will fire off a signal. Okay, so that's how the signal counter works, and I will show you kind of a demonstration of that exactly once we get into it. But the point I wanted to make earlier was that you see this big jump here, right? Notice how the indicators just react to it. Okay, so the indicators themselves, they don't take in advance. The indicators are basically just fed this data, and this huge gap, it doesn't occur to them that say, hey, there's missing data in between. It just simply continues the moving average, and that's why you get these moving averages that just have this sudden dive down, and you can see at the beginning of the morning. So imagine you wake up and you start trading in the morning at 7 o'clock, and your SMA is way up there now. Okay, that's in most cases not really relevant, and that might actually be damaging if you have a system. Okay, so that is why, generally speaking, you want to include all the data you can, so it doesn't sort of mess up your indicators that way. And of course, maybe that's the way you want it. Maybe that's the way you want to work it. But most likely it probably isn't. Okay, so if I change that to default 24/7, you see now all the data gets loaded, and you no longer have that really gross looking break there. But the difference is now your session. You see this little line here? That's your session break. It's basically at midnight, or not 2200 hours, but I guess whenever the data stopped. And it figured that there was a rollover in the day. You can see the data was smooth, but now, there is no kind of session break saying, hey, start again at 7 o'clock, or open up your, this is where the market would have opened. There's nothing saying, hey, let's begin trading now. Okay, so now we can use BloodHound to sort of make that a little more clear, because BloodHound can actually use things like a time session. So let's just illustrate that piece. So I'm going to add BloodHound to this, and let's expand that a little bit so we get distinct bars. And this is probably familiar, as you can see, because this is I'm just going to pop this over top here. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new logic screen here. And let me just kind of size these guys a little better. Okay, and I'm going to show you what we call the time session solver. Okay, and I plug that in. I got 24/7 here. That's just going to give me basically tell me that the whole chart is 24/7. So not really useful there. But now I'm going to select that. And as you can see, you can select any session that you may have just defined earlier, or maybe one that's predefined by NinjaTrader. And I'm going to select the regular trading hours for the NYMEX. Okay, and you can see immediately on the right hand side, now I've got basically a filter, really, right? So if you want to say, like, just take trades only during the regular trading hours, all you gotta do is take your original signal. So let's go ahead and add a signal, because we're going to have to do it anyway. And it's a crossover, and we said it was going to be a 1030. So a 1030 cross. All right, and I'm going to label that accordingly. 10x30. Okay, so if I plug that in, you can see I got signals all over the place. If I was trading away and you let this auto trader go during the night, you'd be taking trades in the middle of the night, and maybe that's something you don't want to do. Maybe you decided you just want to trade during the regular trading hours. So really, you can treat this time session solver like a filter, right? And in the filter, all you got to do is just AND it together with your signal, and then that's how you get your basically a combined situation where it's only going to take your crossovers during the regular trading hours. So you can see here 7 o'clock occurred here, right? So this stuff is open, it's fair game. Any time when the market was closed here, so this is at 4 in the morning, you got the signals did not occur, and if the reason why is because you plug the time session solver in directly. See, it's got nothing here. It only sort of opens up here at 7 o'clock. So this will probably illustrate the best here. So there you go. All right. So for example, this little crossover got filtered out. So that's a really easy way to just kind of filter, restrict your signals to a certain time period. Okay, is just throw in a time session solver and hook it up to an AND node. Okay, so what we want to build, again, this is rather more complex than this, and what we're going to do again is try to count up to 3 signals during your regular trading hours. And so I'm going to tackle this by first creating the filter. Okay, so we got our signal here. Okay, and you got to think, you can almost think of trading as like two separate. If you're designing a system, you can sort of think of it physically into two different things. You got maybe a signal generator, and then you got your filters. So if you sort of think of it that way, it sort of makes it a little easier to put it together. Okay, so first thing I want to build is my filter. Okay, my filter, however, because we're counting the number of trade signals, the filter by extension is going to have to incorporate the signal in some way, because again, it's the filter is based off the number of trade signals itself. Okay, so it's kind of like a circular dependency, if you will, think of it that way. Okay, so however, now, and this is a little nuance with BloodHound that sometimes when you're first, people are first starting out with it, get a little confused, right? A BloodHound, remember, evaluates the long and the short side separately. Okay, so it doesn't, like when you for example, when you do the counting, okay, it's going to think, it's not going to count like, it's going to count each side separately. Okay, so let me illustrate. So let's plug. All right, let's do this. I'll put the counter on. I'm just going to plug it right in. Okay, so what's going to happen in this thing is just counting essentially. It's default to say, hey, count up to 3 possible signals within the last 3 bars. Okay, so right now we don't have any signals, and it's just, if you kind of remembered it, these were the original signals that did occur. Okay, and what's happening is it's giving me a kind of a 1/3 value here, because it's saying, hey, 1/3 of your criteria was met, only 1 signal fired off, and it carried forward for 3 bars because that's what the look back period was. Okay, so I'm going to carry it forward for, let's say 15, just to illustrate. Okay, so now 15 may not actually be enough, so let's try 50. Okay, so here we got some action. Okay, so basically, notice how the long and short sides have almost nothing to do with each other. This is the point I want to illustrate, is that it's going to consider the long and short sides completely separately. Okay, so the long side, has its own separate count. The short side has its own separate count. That's probably, in this particular case, that's not what we want. Okay, we want to sort of consider the long and short sides together. Okay, so basically what's going on is it's saying, all right, so right here, ignore the short side, just the long side. Long cross here, that's 1. Long cross here, that's 2. And by the time actually it kind of went to about, what about here, my 50 bars are up. So remember, it's only looking back 50 bars. So let's pump this up even more. Let's go to, something super high. Actually, that will mess me up because we're not quite, we haven't got another piece done yet. So let's do 75. Let's see if we can get that 3rd bar in there. Okay, so now we got a couple things going on. So at least on the short side, we got a couple. But you can see here, this is basically saying, hey, all these bars here, essentially it saw 3 signals going back on the short side. Okay, so we can count them within 75 bars. So this is one here, that was another one, and the first one was way back up here. And again, this is like before the market opened or whatever, so it's still going to count those because we won't have any sort of time session filtering going on here. Okay, all right, so that's not exactly what we want, right? We got these long and short sides being completely, you know, basically considered independently of each other. And when we talk signals, we want to say, you know, 3 signals. We don't care long or short. So let's just add them to the count. Okay, so what we're going to do is we have another function node called a long-short modifier. And the long-short modifier will actually let you do things like manipulate essentially the long and short side, so they actually do communicate with each other, if you will. Okay, so again, the objective here is to consider the long and short sides like as one kind of thing, one entity. Okay, so if I plugged in this crossover back in here, you'll notice we got, you know, long signal, short signal, long signal, short signal. What we really want is we want, you know, every time we see a long, we want to see short as well, because we want to be counting them kind of like, you know, we want to be counting them together, right? So to do that, I'm going to plug this into the long and short modifier, and we have one thing called maximum, which basically takes it basically takes one side and the other side, takes the maximum value, plugs and spits it out for both. Okay, so that's effectively going to basically say, hey, look, if you're long, also make a short signal, right? If you're short, also make a long signal. Okay, so I'm going to hit that, and you'll see. Watch, when I plug this in, you see all my signals are now kind of doubled up. Okay, so now we're actually counting properly. We're now we can sort of count the way we sort of want to count. We don't want the long and short sides to be sort of independent of each other, right? We want them to be counted together. Okay, so the you know, here we go, 1, 2, 3, right? So in theory, we should probably get, not probably, in theory, you know, when we plug this into the signal counter, you know, this is kind of the point where we start to see signals. Okay, so let's just see what that looks like now. We plug this one into the signal counter now, and plug that out. Okay, so let's just take a peek again, the crossover, 1, 2, 3. So we, I'm, you know, again, I've got too many bars that's looking back, so we're probably taking some information prior to the open here, because we're, you know, again, I have to show you kind of how we sort of make boundaries, if you will, for the signal counter. Okay, so but for now, let's just leave this as some number, and we'll count backwards just for illustrative purposes. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, actually, yeah, 50 is fine. Okay, so let's take any point here. Okay, so for example, it's saying this point here we had basically 3 signals going back somewhere in my 50 signals, or 50 bars. Okay, and you can see here I had 1, 2, and did 3, in fact more than 3. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, 1, 2, 3. Right. So yeah, so these are 3. 1, 2, 3, and you can see that the long and short sides are identical. You know, we had 1 here, 2 here, and this third one probably occurred before the 50 bars. You know, so I bet you if I even pump this up to 60, maybe we'd probably get a signal right there. Yeah, we did. Okay, so you can see that. So this one here is counted as a third signal from this first one that occurred back here, right? And that's because it's within 60 bars of each other. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy, but there, you know, the issue is kind of like, well, this signal counter is kind of, you know, where's it bound by? Like, where does it start counting? You know, you know, it actually starts counting way back here at the beginning of the chart, which is not really kind of what you want. You want to sort of anchor the counter so that it begins counting basically at the session open, right? That's when you want to start counting, kind of not anywhere else. So the trick to this is to actually use the reset. Okay, so the resets are basically, you know, in this, think of it as like you got this little function node, and it's performing a job, right? Its job is to count, and it's got like an internal counter that's incrementing every time a signal pops in. Now, when a reset signal occurs, or reset condition occurs, it basically resets that count back to 0. Okay, so that's a great way to. The reset is designed to basically anchor, where you're going to start counting from. Okay, so again, we want to start counting from the market open, which is here, not kind of at some arbitrary point at the beginning of the chart, or not even, this is arbitrary, right? This is the look back period of 60, right? So this is telling it count back 60 bars. Really, what we want is just to simply start counting, starting the beginning of the session. So this is how you would anchor something. Okay, so let's go back to our time session solver. Okay, and if you recall here, we have signals occur. Basically, time session solver is like a filter again. So we got basically signals or ones in each direction anytime we're inside the zone. Okay, so if we just simply plug this in to the signal counter, basically what would happen is every bar would be considered signal, and then it would be like saying, reset your count every time you see one of these bars, which is not quite what we want. Okay, what we want instead is to actually reset the bars, and there's two ways to do this. So actually, I just thought of a better way. So we actually had a signal blocker here in my original one, and in fact, I will try that right now, but I'll show you that there's probably a little more efficient way. So what the signal blocker can do is I can sort of make this, instead of just continuous, I can make it pulse, right? So I can make it pulse once on the open, and basically pulse again on the next open. Right, so that's one way to do it. Or I can tell it just anytime this is, and I just thought this is probably a quicker way to do it, but let's try the quicker way first. Anytime we're blank like this, reset the count, reset the count, reset the count. Okay, now don't reset the count. Actually start counting. So we can do it that way too. So I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to tell this. I select on this signal counter, and I'm going to go and tell this thing, reset when there is no reset signal coming in. Okay, so again, the reset signal is this one right here. Okay, and I'm just going to tell it, look, when you see blanks, when you see it firing blanks in there, just keep resetting your count. All right, when you don't see blanks coming in, okay, now start counting. Okay, so so I basically have to reverse that. This was originally true, and this was false, and now I've reversed it. Okay, so again, so it's very important. I'm telling the signal counter during this phase here, do not count. Right? Essentially, reset your count, reset your count, reset your count. So it's always going back to 0. Reset your count, reset your count, reset your count, reset your count. Goes here. Now it's like, okay, start counting. Okay, don't reset your count. Just continue counting. Right? And that's kind of how you would anchor your. This is kind of how you would anchor your count. Okay, so let's just verify that. Okay, so it's going to take a little while to crunch, but you can see now, look, like before this market open here, you got nothing, which is exactly what you want, right? Nothing happened because it wasn't counting. It was resetting the count every bar before, right? Now the market opens, the counting starts, and it doesn't reset anymore. Now it's just starting to count. And it's looking back, 50 bars. Okay, so that's another troublesome thing. Is basically, we don't really want this second. So that you can see, like, yeah, I successfully counted 3 here. Okay, you're done with the 3, and now we're going to keep, it's going to keep counting, and we don't want to, in this case, it's still saying, hey, look, 50 bars back, I still had three crossovers, right? we actually don't want, we don't want this extra stuff back there. We just kind of want it to be, flat lined across. Okay, so this is and actually as I'm kind of talking this through, I'm realizing there's more and more efficient ways to do this. So my original design this morning actually can be improved on greatly, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and let's do this kind of the simpler way. Okay, so I'm gonna pump this up so it's like, it doesn't. I don't want it to start recounting, within 60 bars. I don't want it to really recount at all. I just want to keep it going, right? So I'm going to pump that number to something really high. And unfortunately, when you do that, it's going to take a little, it's now going to go through each bar and look back 750 bars. So it's actually going to take a little longer to calculate. So there you go. Okay, so now you can see this is kind of the effect we want here, right? So we're starting to see that at the open, we had, we basically, before the open, we had nothing. And as we opened up, it started counting the, each crossover. So that was the first one. I guess that one didn't really touch and cross over there. So this is the second one. That's the third one. And then, we had a nice little, basically we're good for the rest of the day. Okay. And then finally, at the session close, this time session solver kicks in again, and it says start resetting your count. Reset, 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 reset. That's why you get nothing, which is basically the effect we want. Okay. All right. Now I did say we want to take the first three. Okay. So can you sort of see that essentially what we've done is created a filter, except it's kind of the opposite of what we want, right? This is giving me the signals, like it's now saying, if I were to use this as a filter by itself, it would be saying, all right, don't trade here, trade here, right? That is the exact reverse of what we want. We want to say trade here, don't trade here, okay? So there's two steps we got to do, two more steps, and they're really trivial, but essentially we're almost there, okay? And notice as well, okay, by the way, this is a little nuance, and this is kind of something you discover when you just kind of when you finally get into it and you start looking at the details of it. It's something that you might not see until you actually do it. But if we just simply swapped it and said, don't trade, trade here, don't trade here, then this third signal will actually be missed because it is the signal that actually causes it to flip the switch, but we still want to trade that last signal. So actually, even though I said I'm going to take the three first signals coming in, I actually going to pump this number up to 4, knowing that I want to still take that third signal. Okay, and actually, literally, I didn't figure this out until I kind of put it all together and said, hey, look, I'm missing a signal. So, I'm just sort of kind of the benefit of hindsight, if you will. And really, it's just a simple matter of just change the number to 4, and now everything up until the 4th signal will be traded. Okay, so like I said, we want to invert this. Okay, so to do that, all we got to do, stick in an inverter node, and it will reverse. Okay, now we're still not quite there yet. Okay, because this, for one thing, you'll notice that the filter is still not, it's now, now we're including all the stuff, behind the time where the time session began, which is not what we want. But also, we kind of got this weird looking pattern here, right? Because you remember the counter was kind of like, when the first count would give you only a third of a bar, the second count 2/3, and the third count, so on and so forth. So it's like it's just building the count gradually. What we want is more of an on and off situation. In other words, yes, you can go, no, you can't go. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, and if I select on the signal counter, let's just take the inverter out because sometimes it's hard to really think kind of backwards. But okay, there you go. See, so you can see how it's just building it, building it, building it, building it. Here's the point where we're interested in. This is the 4th signal. Okay, so we really don't care about this, being kind of half. one quarter, two, half and 3/4. In fact, we want this actually, if we want to flip this around and have a proper filter, really we want this to all be 0, all this to be 1 at this, when we hit this point. I'm going to switch over here. Okay, and the way we're going to do that is if you look on the signal counter, we have an output style that we can change. We can actually change it to digital. Okay, so right now it's what we call fuzzy, so it's actually giving us a graduated increase every time a new count has been added to the counter. And this is kind of great for just seeing what the counter is seeing, but it won't work for our purposes. So I'm going to switch this to digital. And again, it's got to go and choose some numbers. There we go. And you can see now we have more of the effect we want, right? We're just interested in this point here. And so now if I flip it, right, this is essentially, again, this is now the point where the force signal occurred during the day. Okay, so the counting started here, force signal occurred here, flipped on. Okay, we want the exact opposite. We want to flip it off. So I'm going to invert it, and I've already done that. I've already plugged it into the inverter. Plug that in, and now you see it's the exact opposite. And we are literally one step away, okay, from building our filter, because we're not quite done yet, right? Remember, we're actually interested, let me just expand that a little bit, right? We're interested in this zone here from 7 o'clock to the fourth, just before the fourth signal. This is the bar just before the fourth signal, okay? This is what we call, this is going to be our tradable zone. The problem is now we got all the stuff before 7 o'clock as well, right? But if you recall, we do have that time session solver, and that time session solver, basically, cuts out everything before 7 o'clock and everything between those, the hours that we want to trade, right? So we're going to actually add them together. For those of you that are mathematicians, that's basically an intersection of two domains, right? So we have our first domain here, which is basically counting everything up until, sorry, did I get the right one? Counting everything up until the fourth signal, just prior to the fourth signal. And then we have our other domain here, which is our trading hours that we want to trade. And there's this juicy middle here from here to the fourth signal, which was, I think, right around here. That only this little zone here we want to trade. So if we intersect the two, or if we add them together, we should have a proper filter now. There you go. Okay, so now you can see we just filter out successfully just a little section here, but the market opens all the way just prior, just prior to the fourth signal, right? The fourth signal, remember, will actually cause it to stop. Okay, so that is our filter, right? So this is the trade zone that we're interested in. Okay, so there's probably another one back here, right? So this one again occurred at 7 o'clock in the morning. 1, 2, 3 signals occurred, and it's supposed to be just prior. So it's hard to see with this, the line being so thick, but essentially what it's saying is this was the fourth signal on this bar, and it's not including that. Okay, so now we've successfully built our filter. Okay, and all we have to do is just take our original filter and combine it with our original signal. Okay, so I'm going to pop in, this is our original signal back here, right? Pop it in to the AND node. There you go, 3 signals. Okay, so we just got our filter, the trade zone, and boom, 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 3 signals, and we're off. We're done for the day. Counter, keeps counting for the rest of the day, and market closes. Sorry if it's really slow on your screen, because I know that it's when I scroll the screen, the GoToMeeting doesn't really update quick enough sometimes. But I've now just scrolled to the next day, the next session, and you can see that at the next section open, it took the first signal, the second signal, the third signal, stopped. That's it. That's it for the rest of the day. Okay, so that is how you put together a count 3 signals for in a particular time session. Okay, so I want to modify this a little bit to make it just a little more streamlined. Because they're like, the thing with BloodHound is, like, again, we built it so that we just kind of give you a lot of these little basic building blocks, like Lego building blocks, right? And with the Lego, you can really just kind of construct anything you want out of it. And so there's many ways to skin the cat. So one thing in particular that as I was just kind of putting this together, I just realized I could probably optimize things a little bit better, is this little contention point here. So I've got the signal counter, and if you recall, basically I'm telling it to look back 750 bars, every bar, just to get all my bases covered. It's basically the same. It's basically saying, I just keep counting, like don't factor in the look back period. Like, just make it long enough so that it's not resetting the count essentially at any given point in time. And so if you recall, so I plug this in directly to the result node here, right? So all right, so there we go. Is that what I wanted? Yeah, okay, right, it's digital, I forgot. I was looking for the gradated, count. Actually, I'm going to switch it back to analog just so that we can illustrate this point a little better. Yeah, for sure. I'll make sure this end result is posted basically with the with the whole system. And don't worry if you didn't kind of get all this at once. Like, it took, it'll take a couple tries at it, and for sure, if you can sort of see it, piece by piece, you can see how these little nodes can be put together to really make anything you want. But anyways, let's see if I can get back to what I was trying to get at here earlier. Okay, so 750 works only because I'm basically trying to get a big enough number so that it will look back 750 bars, and it's not going to affect the count for the day. If I put this number too low, so like 50, for example, okay, which will allow BloodHound to count faster, but there's going to be some issues. Things like this. Okay, so for example, that's the third signal. The fourth signal occurred over here, but it was not within 50 bars of these previous signals. So therefore, this one didn't get counted. Their count actually essentially reset itself, if you will. Well, not quite, but remember, you got to think it's actually counting. It's looking back 50 bars for each bar, and it's basically asking, was there a count within 50 bars of it? And in this case, this fourth signal did not occur, within 50 bars of, this first signal, right? And generally speaking, like, when you use a signal counter, that actually is kind of what maybe you want, right? Say you've got some criteria, like, I want 3 bars up in a row. Well, it doesn't make sense if those 3 bars are 100 bars apart. Maybe you got some sort of tolerance, and you're like, I want 3 bars up in a row, but within 10 bars of each other, or something like that, or you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how the signal counter was originally conceived, and so we got to work around a little bit here to sort of use it for this purpose. But see, if I pump this number up to 75, we might be able to. Yeah, there we go. So now we just got that the fourth signal just ekes in. This must be the 75th bar, in fact. So you can see how it started here. Boom. First one, second one, third one, and then finally it counts that last bar, and now, unfortunately, instead of giving us kind of remember before, but we had 750 bars, 750 bars. We had this nice thick, long, or we had this nice section here that was completely full, like completely all ones, and that's actually what we wanted. Okay, so 700, like I said, 750 is perhaps too much, but we want to pick a number that's kind of safe, right? We want the first 3 signals, but we want to make sure we do actually capture all. There could be a potential that the signals are not are less than or more than 300 bars apart or 75 bars apart. So that's why I'm going to pop up to 300. Okay, but another way to sort of do this is we can sort of say when we get the situation here where sorry, I'm just thinking through my head and seeing if this is actually going to work. But where we get actually in this fourth signal, I just want to keep it on and maintain. Basically turn on a switch, leave that switch on, for the rest of the day. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to just sort of reconfigure a couple things and actually use a toggle node to do the switch. Okay, so first of all, we still have to anchor this, and I just want to make sure. So yeah, it is anchored to the beginning of the session, which is what we want. So it is still counting four signals at the beginning of the session, but it's only looking back 300 bars each. And then I'm going to flip a switch when it occurs, and that's what we use the toggle node for. Okay, so this toggle node is going to switch on as soon as it sees this first signal here, right here. Okay, and it's just going to stay on. So to do that, on this signal coming in, basically when this is saying when a signal comes in, toggle it, which is not what I want. I want to force it on, and then the same idea with the toggle. I want to anchor it so it's at the beginning of the session here at 7 o'clock, and so I want to reset the toggle so that it basically shuts back down, shuts off, if you will, when this time session is not in effect. Okay, so let's throw this in the reset. Okay, I'm going to anchor it so that when the let's see, when it turns on, sorry, when it goes off, I want it to reset to off. So, all right, I hate to sort of make this more complicated than it has to be, but okay, if you recall, what we want to do is we actually want to clear this toggle, to force it off when this goes off. Okay, so we actually want to force it off in this early morning hours area, or this when it's not trading. And so to do that, and sorry to make this even more confusing, because again I'm just kind of doing this little piece on the fly, I have to invert the signal. Okay, so I'm actually going to create a new inverter. I'm going to call this, make sure just so we don't confuse it with the other one, I'm going to call this one the time session inverter. All right, I'm going to plug this one in, give me the opposite of that, and you can see that's exactly what it has done. So essentially what I want to do is when this is in the off hours, I want to force this toggle off. Okay, so actually I want to plug it into the reset, and on this reset signal, force it off like so. Okay, all right. Hope I haven't thoroughly lost anybody, but in theory, when I put this back in, now you can see I've got basically a toggle that basically turns on the force signal and remains on throughout the day, and then essentially at the end of the day, when the time session solver is now saying you're done for the day, now toggle it off, like so. Okay, so we essentially got the same effect that we had before, just with more nodes. Why would we do something like this? Well, it does make it a little more efficient, because if you think from a computational standpoint, looking back, 300 bars is still much better than 750. I'm aware that it's a bit of a design, limitation, and that's something that probably we'll have to fix, so that say you don't want look back period. In this case, the signal counter, the look back period is irrelevant. We don't really want one. We actually want it just to rely on the resets and not even factor in look back period, because we've properly anchored it to the beginning of the time session. So in theory, look back period is just complicating matters. It's adding computational cycles, and it's also a little more confusing to the user. Okay, so maybe in the future I'll figure out a way to in fact eliminate this, make this look back period optional. And signal blocker suffers from the same issue as well. But for now, I'm just going to set that to a low enough number that it's not going to kill my computational resources, but a high enough number that I know that I'm going to get, pretty much, I wouldn't say guaranteed, but 99.9% of the time I should be getting the signal, all four signals within 300 bars somewhere. That's something you got to ask yourself. That's really good. Could make you got to make sure that actually will happen. Okay, so all right, so that will look just like the. All right, so again, so now we want to now we want to do the same thing we sort of did before, which is invert it. Right, so in fact, I'm going to take this guy out and I'll wire this one back in here like so. And if I plug in the inverter, you'll see that this is the situation we explored earlier this morning, where it's basically taking everything up to the 4th trade for the day, but it's also taking everything before that as well. So now if we took the we add it together with the time session solver, we will get the exact same thing I explained this morning, which is so let me just unplug that one. This little creamy area, if you will, that we want to trade, which is before we want to trade when the market opens all the way up to the 4th count, right? So that's there, and finally, just like before, if I plug in the final signal, we got our 3 count for the day, 1, 2, 3. So that's sort of a secondary way to do it, a little more advanced. But I just have the opportunity now to show you what the toggle does. I encourage you to sort of like maybe go through and review this. It will be. I am recording it, and I will be sending it to Zach to make sure that he puts it online, but that's basically kind of the lesson I had planned today. So I actually think I did a lot better job than I did last week explaining that rather than trying to do it on the fly, which, believe me, is it's a lot more difficult than it looks when you're trying to figure stuff out logically, and at the same time you're trying to solve a problem. For some reason, your brain just shuts down. At least I find it with me. So it's better to actually have stuff sort of pre-prepared. And then before you try to present it, at least I learned that the hard way. No, Zach, he does a lot more preparation. Certainly a little more diligent than I am, but I had some time this morning. Okay. All right. So yeah. So that's kind of what I had planned. Zach told me he wanted to look at the signal blocker. So. I'm gonna have to tell him, unfortunately, we had a little change of plan, and I think what I showed here was kind of, you know, showed you some of the other, you know, common nodes that do have some common functionality with a signal blocker. Perhaps one thing I kind of I want to illustrate here. This is, I'm going to create a new one here. I want to show you something which may or may not be of use to you guys. But you know, just imagine. All right, so let's take our time session solver back in here. Okay, and my original design of this morning, if you notice, I actually did have a signal blocker in here, and like there's a couple ways to do this. And the reason why I had that signal blocker in there was because I was trying to actually pulse the you know, like basically reset the signal counter basically on a pulse instead of every bar. So instead, what I was trying to do was actually, in a quite inefficient way to do it, was actually use the signal blocker to instead of creating these long zones of ones, is just pulse it once. So you get this signal here, you get blanks, and then pulse it again, you know, in the next open, and that would have been, you know, basically the signal to the counter to reset using a pulse, and turned out while I was doing it, there was a more efficient way, which is simply resetting it, you know, while it was blank instead. But nonetheless, let me show you how to do a pulse with a signal blocker. And even as I'm doing this, I'm thinking there's probably a better way to do it using the toggle node, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and do this anyway. Okay, so to do the signal blocker, is, you know, effectively just does what you think it does. It will take a long stream like this and create pulses out of it. Now, it's very similar to the counting node in that those pulses do reset themselves basically when, let me see, why did that work? There you go. Okay, so basically pulse themselves after a certain number of bars. In this case, I got it set to 5 bars. Okay, so it's like, literally I'm getting, you know, originally I had, remember I had a nice thick stream of ones over here, but now we've got this pulse that goes every 5 bars. Okay, so same idea, the counting node, you know, like if I don't want that, I want it to basically block it and pulse once for the entire day. You know, I got to set this number to something super high. Yeah, whatever, 800. Okay, so there we get that pulse, and the next time session we get another pulse. Okay, so that's kind of one way to go about doing it. I don't particularly like that, but you know, you can do it that way. Another way to do this is, as I was saying, possibly to use the toggle node instead. And let me think that over before I go ahead and do that, if that's possible. Yeah, I guess we could do the same kind of, you know, like the same thing we did before, which is instead of setting this number to something high, is do the same thing in terms of actually no, sorry, I'm just tripping over my own words. Yeah, I guess that is probably the only way to do the pulsing. But originally that's kind of what I was thinking about when I was feeding this. If you look at the original design I had this morning, was actually feeding that pulse into the reset of the signal counter. And so the settings of the signal counter's reset would be slightly different because we're pulsing it and we're telling it to start counting on that pulse. And so the reset is actually going to look like this. It's going to, as you recall, before I had the reset here false and this one to true, it's now the opposite. So it's basically telling it, all right, you see that one pulse come in, start your count, and then it's basically, again, we're trying to anchor it to the beginning of the session, and start your count and keep going, and then then I realized that there's probably a more efficient way, and that was just simply to reset the count, when it was off anyways, and then start counting when it, start the counting for real when the session opened. So the signal blocker was actually not necessary in the original design, but that was nonetheless. I figured I'd show you kind of what I was thinking this morning when I did originally put this together. Okay, so that's, I guess the thing, before I kind of wind down, I just want to basically explain that the reset is a very flexible kind of it's a very flexible little apparatus, which if you think of it this way, is just what your function node does something every bar, and a lot of these function nodes do things like look back a certain number of bars and perform some sort of analysis over those bars, and it maintains some kind of internal state. Okay, so the signal blocker maintains a state because it's saying, you see a signal, you block everything else behind it. Okay, so the reset is there so that it will reset the state so that it doesn't continue to block stuff behind it based off some sort of condition. And each one kind of follows the same convention. So that it just basically allows you to reset its behavior. Resets are great for, like as we saw here, anchoring. Say at the beginning of a time session or something like that. But you can anchor to anything else. You can anchor to maybe another signal, maybe a crossover signal, who knows? Or maybe you've got, maybe you like to build your system so you've got like, you've got some sort of general criteria, and this is what you call your quote-unquote setup. And when you're set up, that's when you want some other criteria to go in and take effect. So therefore, you kind of want to anchor your other criteria to take effect based off your setup. So you can sort of use your setup as your essentially your reset. Okay, so think about that. So the reset is great for anchoring behavior to occur, like after certain conditions been met. And as you can see, you can actually reset the node not just with the reset signal, not just with this plug, but you can actually even reset it with the input plug as well. And you can also do things like you can force reset to occur, when an opposite signal occurs on the other side. Like say you're dealing with the long side, and there's something occurs on the short side. You can force the reset behavior to occur just by simply setting one of these guys to true. Right, so these are opposite signals. Okay, so essentially it resets you can configure your little node to reset under a lot of different combinations of possibilities. Okay, so generally when you're putting the system together, you've already got in mind why what exactly is going to cause it to reset, and then you've predetermined that. But we tried to sort of select typical behaviors, typical things. And the signal blocker was originally set to true here on the opposite signal. Kind of like thinking if you this is the original. Let me just show you the original kind of the original idea behind the signal blockers. It was sort of like if you had I like to crossovers, if you haven't noticed, just because they're just easy signal generators for illustrative purposes. But say you had a signal that occurred 3 times in a row. Okay, something like this. Okay, you see that? So I got these thick signals that give me 1, 2, 3, the redundant signals, say, right? Could be anything, right? Just say you had something like this, and for whatever reason, you don't want 3 in a row like that. You want a single discrete signal. That's it. So that was the original design behind the signal blocker, was to make that really easy. You plug it in like that, changes all those thick signals into thin signals, into discrete signals. Okay, so of course, just because it was designed that way, and it was designed to take up redundant signals, doesn't mean that's all you have to use it for. You can use it, as you saw earlier, you can use the pulse. You can use the pulse things, and you can. And there's probably a ton of other uses that we'll never even dream of that you guys can figure out to use it for. All right, so that's the, I guess, the conclusion of what I had to show today. And apologize if you know, it doesn't look like any sort of new questions came in, but honestly, to be perfectly honest, I'm not super awesome at thinking on my feet anyway, so I probably just stumble along if I try to answer any of your questions. I'm just one of those guys that need a little preparation before I go ahead and do stuff. And on the fly, I just tend to flounder about. So perhaps it worked out okay today, but maybe I'll just I'll review the questions really quickly here, and then let you guys go for the day, or actually for the weekend rather. Okay, so all right. I guess the only thing I didn't really address is Randy's thing here. He says example, like taking 2 setups after a moving average crossover and anchoring again when it crosses back the other way for 2 more setups, etc. Yeah, so that's a great way. That's a great example. So you know, you may have like I was explaining before, you might have some sort of anchor a condition that has to occur before your other criteria kicks in. So the resets on these counters and the signal blockers are great for sort of anchoring again your behavior to occur only after those conditions. Right? So that's a great point, Randy. Okay, so I hope I haven't thoroughly lost anybody. You know, like I said, this will be recorded. I'm going to be sending it to Zach, and he'll be posting it next week. And you guys can review this kind of over and over again if you need to. And Zach should be back next week for you guys. I am busy, hard at work with some more little additions for if any of you guys are here for the next gen customers. Basically, let me just let you know kind of what's upcoming. But I've been working, as some of you saw last week, on the robustness of the Raven Trader, really trying to hammer it and make it work under all conditions, split fills, overfills, rejected orders, all stuff in real life that could happen. You know, in sort of a perfect vacuum, none of those things would happen. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with networks and latency, you know, there are all sorts of exceptions that can occur. You know, for example, you know, say you've got an order that's submitted, and you decide when your criteria says cancel it for whatever reason, the cancellation goes through, but the broker has already filled it, maybe filled the stop or something like that, or filled the order before your computer could have, before the message is sort of received on the broker's end. You're in what they call an overfill situation, and now your computer has to deal with your strategy has to be able to cope with extra positions that you may not have intended. And so I've been hard at work trying to make sure that Raven will cope with that, because it can occur. You know, it actually occurs, can occur quite frequently if you are, say, reversing and the market is really close to a stop or a profit target, and the reversal occurs just before, you know, at least on your side, it occurs just before that stop is about to be hit, but it actually does hit in the broker side. Now the reversal goes through, and now you're more contracts in the opposite direction than you should be. So Raven is now designed to cope with that, and actually will not make it mathematically impossible for that to happen, using a set of basically state verifications, so that at any given point in time, it knows exactly what state you're in before moving and going forward. So a really complicated explanation for saying it's really robust. But the nice thing about it is now third-party developers that may want to take advantage of this all this work that I've put into to make the management more robust, that's sort of the second step. I'm trying to open it up a little bit. I wouldn't say make it open source, but make it so that other people can extend and take advantage of the trade management work that I've done, you know, for their own use. So naturally, you know, I wouldn't say it's open source because I mean, to use it, you still need a BloodHound license, but other people can use it to augment, say, a system that they're designing, even if it technically doesn't use BloodHound but uses their own entry logic. Okay, so that's what I've been doing, and I guess that's kind of all I got. That's all I got for today. So you guys have a great weekend. And